A special thanks to all our subscribers. Thank you for being part of our journey. This episode will revisit the debate between AP and MENJ titled, "Is Islam Dangerous to the World?" Here, we will review the response to a simple but very insightful question: why will the perfect example for all mankind marry a 6-year-old child and bed her at 9? At times when Dawagandists answer questions, you get the impression that they either don't give much thought to the questions, they don't understand the question, they don't listen to themselves when they answer, they don't have an answer for the question, or they are outrightly being deceptive. Perhaps MENJ can do better. Let's hear the question.
Hassan Syed says, why does Islam think that a man in his 50s, namely Muhammad, having sexual relations with a 9-year-old is okay, but listening to music is bad? How is music worse than child molestation?
To the issue regarding the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam marrying Aisha. So, carrier Islamophobes, they take this out of context. So they say, oh, the Prophet married a 6-year-old and he consummated the marriage at 9. Therefore, your Prophet is a pedophile. But no, that's not true because you take it out of context. And during the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, no one ever complained about it. Okay, no one ever questioned it. No one ever derided him for it. It was an accepted, practice in the Middle East, especially we are talking about 1,400 years ago, by the way, right? So, many cultures practice this, okay? And let's not forget, in the Bible, Isaac married a 3-year-old Rebecca, okay? Rebecca was 3 years old.
Let's examine his responses so far. First, the only reason you will discuss the issue of Muhammad's child marriage is that you are an Islamophobe. Secondly, you are taking it out of context, but he did not seem to give the alternative context. To be fair, he did claim that child marriage was an acceptable norm in the 7th century with no proof though. However, note that no one is asking why people had child marriage in the 7th century. People of all centuries will have the right to ask this question because Muslims claim that Muhammad is the perfect example for all mankind. Therefore, shouldn't our moral standards be measured by those of Muhammad since he is the best of men? To show how deceptive Islam can be, the Muslim apologist went ahead to claim that Rebecca was 3 years old when she married Isaac. He made this claim in a previous video and several responses were given to refute the claim. Still, he continues to make the claim. But for the sake of the current argument, if Isaac married Rebecca when she was 3 years old, anyone can clearly say it was wrong, but you still would not be required to measure your morality with that of Isaac. Because no one ever claimed that Isaac is the best moral example for all mankind. But to show that MENJ is not being deceptive, he can justify his claim with a reference from the Bible. Just a reminder, the claim is that in the Bible, Isaac married 3-year-old Rebecca.
Show me where it says in the Bible that Rebecca was 3 years old.
You can check it in the Talmud for yourself. Okay,
you just said in the Bible. Show me where it says in the Bible.
Please don't interrupt me. Okay, please don't interrupt me, Miss What? Afraid? Okay, you're afraid of me. You want me to hit you with this? Okay.
So you make claims, and I ask you to back them up. Where does it say in the Bible that she was 3 years old?
Let me finish first. Okay, so Rebecca was 3 years old, and Isaac married Rebecca when she was 3 years old. And you don't see Islamophobes talking about it because you know why? Because they are haters. They hate Islam.
Did the Muslim apologist just concede that the claim is not in the Bible? He said you can find it in the Talmud. So why does he attribute it to the Bible at first? Even worse, following up with the claim will lead anyone to some very absurd conclusions. For example, you will conclude that Rebecca's father, Betuel, was also 3 years old when Rebecca got married. You can try to figure that out for yourself. Since this is one of his major polemics against the Bible, can we assume that he also believed that Betuel was 3 years old? Or is he just adamantly being deceptive?
So if the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, was doing something which is normal during his time period. Okay, I mean, come on, back in those days, people were herding sheep, and it was an agricultural society. So, women were expected to get married when they reached puberty, and Aisha fit the bill. Okay, she was. She reached puberty when she was 9. Okay. So that is why the Prophet waited 3 years. Let's not forget, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married Aisha when she was 6 years old, and he waited for 3 years before he consummated the marriage. Why do you think he waited 3 years? If he were a pedophile, he could just sleep with her at that moment. Okay. So this issue was, I recall, learning about this issue back in 1999, 2000. I mean, it was back then the internet was Wild Wild West, so there wasn't many people, talking about it, but it came from that. Women were expected to get married when they reached puberty, and she reached puberty when she was 9. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married Aisha when she was 6 years old. Women were expected to get married when they reached puberty, and she reached puberty when she was 9. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married Aisha when she was 6 years old. Women were expected to get married when they reached puberty, and she reached puberty when she was 9.
Note that by MENJ admission, women should only get married when they reach puberty. Aisha reached puberty when she was 9, but Muhammad married her when she was 6. Hence, by MENJ's standards, Muhammad is not the perfect example. He should have at least waited to marry her when she was 9.
So bringing up the Bible is of course a very nice deflection. There is no source in the Bible which actually says that Rebecca was 3 years old, but we established that already. The issue is Muhammad was 50-something years old when he married a 6-year-old girl and consummated the marriage, meaning had sex with her, penetrated her. A 50-year-old man when she was 9 years old, taking her to bed, a little 9-year-old girl and having sex with her. That is your perfect human being prophet. It is not some random guy who lived in an environment in the stupid 7th century Arabia where people didn't know how to live. It is supposed to be your perfect moral guide for all mankind, who should not be affected by his environment and what people do, but rather should set an example for all mankind to follow. And what he does is to take a little girl to bed and penetrate her when he is an old man, and you cannot bring me a single source in which it says that that was only something of that time, which is why Muslims today, like Daniel Kikiju and maybe probably you, say that it's entirely acceptable. So finally, do you think, or do you not think, that according to Islam it is acceptable to marry a 9-year-old girl and have sex with her right now in today's time? If not, based on what? Go ahead.
Yes, as usual, you conflate issues. Okay. I have written an article a long time ago refuting this accusation about Aisha radiallahu anha. And okay, first of all, let's establish certain things, right? First of all, did Aisha ever complain about her marriage to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Did she ever do that? Okay, was she ever abused, mistreated, derided, or whatever it is that you think that she suffered through? Was she happy with the marriage? That's number one. Who are you to be speaking about our mother or the believers, Aisha radiallahu anha, on her behalf, okay, when she hasn't made any complaint? Okay, that's one thing. Secondly, okay, as I've said earlier, the Prophet was living 1,400 years ago. It was a normal practice back then. Okay, I mean, nobody was complaining. I mean, until people like Ridvan here, like Aidemir here, came along and repeated the lie that was only concocted in the 19th century by this Orientalist. Okay? I don't recall his name at the moment, but he was the first person to accuse the Prophet of doing something sexually questionable to Aisha radiallahu anha. Okay? So the Prophet was just a man who was living, in those times, in that age. So obviously he has to conform with the traditions and the mores of his time. I mean, we're not saying that the Prophet is God. Okay, yes, he's the best example of mankind to ever walk the earth. But that doesn't mean every single thing that he does. Okay? That doesn't mean every single thing that he does is something that we should follow. For example, the Prophet rode camels. I mean, if that's the sunnah, is that what it's supposed to follow? I gotta move forward.
False equivalence. You did not answer the question. Thank you. Everybody gotta move.
I did. I haven't finished. I haven't finished the answer.
They usually pretend to not understand the question. This is because admitting the obvious will only lead to the conclusion of pedophilia. No one will judge Muhammad on why he ride a camel and not a supersonic jet, how he dressed in the 7th century, or what he ate. Muhammad being the best moral example for all mankind means that his moral standards serve as a yardstick, a bar, a benchmark against which every other human should measure their moral standards. If according to the Muslim apologist MENJ's standards, he failed by marrying Aisha before she got to puberty, then Muslims only have to do some gymnastics to keep believing that Muhammad is the perfect moral example for all mankind. But there is someone whose standards are unmatched, unparalleled and matchless. Someone who says, everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. That person is Jesus. Come to him today, he is ever willing to accept anyone and everyone. Dear Muslim friends, if your imams and apologists continue to lie to you about the Quran and the Bible, what else are they lying to you about? If you choose the God of the Jews and Christian, you must read the scriptures of the Jews and Christians to know their God. Thank you for joining us this far. Consider subscribing to the channel and be part of our journey as we expose the lies. Press the notification button to be notified when the next episode is uploaded. If you disagree with MENJ's responses, you can leave your comments below. Finally, don't forget to like and share with other Muslims.